Hey guys, we're getting to the end of this series. It will culminate with Jesus being on the cross and crying, "It is finished." But before we get there, there are so many other amazing incidences that I just wish I had time to spend on all of them. But I just want to focus on one that may sound a little bit strange. You know, everybody has their pet sermons that they like to preach, and they'll find different shapes and forms and different ways to communicate the same message, because nothing really changes. But the message of salvation is so beautifully portrayed in the wonder of the trade with Barabbas. Let me read you what happened. Jesus was in the courtyard with Pilate. Pilate had questioned him and found nothing wrong with him. And then in desperation, Pilate says, "I've got an idea. It's that time of year where I get to offer to you an exchange. Would you rather I release Jesus, the King of the Jews, to you, or Pilate, or Barabbas, the one who'd been in the prison?" Let me just read that account to you. "Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of envy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do with the one you call the King of the Jews?" Pilate asked. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate was a people pleaser. Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. You know, that story of Barabbas just blows you away, does it not? Can you imagine what Barabbas must have felt when he was released from prison and he walks through the courtyard past the prison that had held him for so long, and he looks up at the courtyard and he sees Jesus, and probably with a bit of a smirk he says, "Hey, you're the sucker. You're the one who's going to take my punishment for me." I'm not sure that there were words of thank you for doing this. I'm not sure that there were words of adoration and worship of who he was. I think Barabbas was taking the shortcut and getting out of there as quick as he could. But I wonder if years later, if Barabbas, whatever happened to Barabbas, I wonder if he didn't sit down at night and say, "Man, I wonder who that man was. I wonder why he did that for me. I wonder who he is that he would think that, or the people would say that he was the one that could take away the sin of the world. He was the king. What kind of king is he?" And Barabbas would have been plagued with many, many questions. But you play the scenario to the end, and you would hope that Barabbas saw the light. You would hope that Barabbas suddenly realized that this man is who everybody said he was. He is the King of the Jews. He is the Messiah. And he would have had to stand against the prevailing wisdom of the day, which was the Pharisees and the Romans, who said, "No, he's not. No, he's not. Don't listen to him." But I think with the benefit of retrospect and a little bit of benefit of time, maybe some questions crept into Barabbas's mind. You know what, people? We're just like Barabbas, aren't we? We know better than him, that's for sure. Don't get on your high horse and judge him because he was a criminal. If everybody knew what you'd done, you'd be suicidal. You know, as too was probably Barabbas at times. But if Jesus stood in Barabbas's place, isn't Barabbas like us because Jesus stood in our place? Sometimes I just get overwhelmed with the thought of these incredible truths and wonder if my second name shouldn't be Trevor Barabbas Downham, because I identify completely with him. The only difference between me and him, or me and hopefully what he may have done in time to come, is that we repented of sin. We recognized Jesus was who he was and is who he is, and that we came to him and asked forgiveness, thanking him that he was the one who took our place. He was the one that bore the burden on our behalf. He was the one who took sin and did with it what sin needs to have done to it. He demolished it because of the sacrifice of Jesus. Now, I need to ask, it's coming up to Easter, Good Friday, tomorrow in fact. I would ask you today, have you responded the way that you think Barabbas should have responded? Or have you responded the way that he has, where you say, "Oh well, que sera, sera, my deal is done, and Jesus has taken my sin and I can leave here and go and carry on my life as normal"? Or have you responded as Barabbas, I hope, did, that later in life he had thought about this and he came to Jesus and repented of his sin and said, Jesus, did you really do that for me? Did you really, Jesus, stand in my place and take my punishment on my behalf? That should have been me hanging upon the cross, but Jesus, it wasn't. It was you. Take a moment today, people, just to think about this incredible drama of this situation. And at the end of the day, thank God for the cross. Thank God that his grace and his mercy is so great. He said, you're going to go free. I'll take your punishment for you. I can't believe that. It's incredible. I hope you think about that today. Cheers.